The suitcase hit the porch before Clara Mercer understood what was happening. It landed on its side, popped open, and spilled baby clothes across the wet boards. A blue onesie slid into a puddle near her shoe. Her son Noah woke in her arms and gave a small, tired cry. Margaret Mercer stood in the doorway with one hand on the brass knob and the other on a folded paper. "This house was never yours," she said. Clara stared at her mother-in-law through the rain. 3 weeks ago, she had stood in the same doorway wearing black, holding Margaret's hand while the funeral cars pulled away. 3 weeks ago, they had buried Daniel Mercer beside his father. 3 weeks ago, Margaret had called Clara family. Now the locks had been changed. "Margaret, please," Clara said. "It's cold. Noah has a cough." "That child is not my problem." Clara held the baby tighter. "He is Daniel's son." Margaret's face did not move, not even a blink. "Daniel was kind," she said. "Too kind. He married beneath him. And now everyone expects me to pretend that mistake should cost this family its home." Clara felt the words land, one by one, like stones. Behind Margaret in the warm front hall, Warren Mercer leaned against the staircase with his arms crossed. Daniel's older brother, the man who had smiled at the funeral and told Clara, "We'll take care of everything." Now he looked at her like she was trash left by the curb. "You should go," Warren said, "before the sheriff has to come out here." Clara reached into her coat pocket with shaking fingers and pulled out Daniel's last letter. The paper was soft from being folded too many times. "He wrote this before the accident," she said. "He said if anything happened to him, I should ask about the Grand Theater." For the first time, Margaret's eyes changed. Not much. Just enough. Clara saw it. Warren stepped forward. "What did you say?" Clara unfolded the letter, but Margaret moved faster than any woman her age should have. She snatched it from Clara's hand. "Give that back!" Margaret read only the first line. Then she tore the letter down the middle. Clara gasped. Daniel's words fell in 2 wet pieces on the porch. Margaret dropped them at Clara's feet. "My son chased ghosts," she said. "Do not make the same mistake." Then she closed the door. The lock clicked. For a moment, Clara did not move. The rain ran down her hair, down her face, down Noah's blanket. Inside the house, a lamp glowed behind the curtains. Someone had already erased her from the rooms where she had cooked, folded laundry, waited for Daniel to come home, and painted a small yellow moon above the crib. Noah cried harder. Clara picked up the torn pieces of the letter and shoved them into her pocket. Then she lifted the suitcase, tucked the wet baby clothes back inside, and stepped off the porch. The Mercer house sat at the top of Briar Hill, watching over the town like it owned every roof below it. In many ways, it did. The Mercers had owned the mill, the bank building, the old train office, and half the land along County Road 9. People in Briar Falls did not fight them. They nodded, lowered their voices, and looked away. Clara learned that before she reached Main Street. The lights were still on at Dottie's motel. She walked there first, with water in her shoes and Noah pressed against her chest. The woman at the front desk looked at the baby, then at Clara's suitcase, then at the Mercer house far up the hill. "No rooms," Dottie said. Clara could see 3 keys hanging on the board behind her. "I can pay tomorrow. I just need 1 night." Dottie lowered her voice. "Honey, I'm sorry." Then she slid the little window shut.
At the drugstore, Mr. Harlan turned the sign from open to closed when he saw her coming. Across the street, old Mrs. Bell looked through her curtains and then slowly pulled them tight. By the time Clara reached the end of Main Street, the rain had become a hard, gray sheet.
Noah was quiet now, but that scared her more. His little face was warm against her neck. She turned toward the only building with an overhang wide enough to keep him dry. The Mercer Grand Theater. It stood at the corner of Ash and Pearl, empty since before Clara was born. The tall sign still hung above the entrance, but most of the bulbs were gone. Faded gold letters spelled out Grand, with the R hanging lower than the rest. Posters from old shows curled behind cracked glass. One said, June 1952. Another had a woman in a white dress, her face almost gone from sun damage. Clara had passed the theater many times with Daniel. Once he had stopped across the street and stared at it for so long that she asked what was wrong. "Old buildings remember things," he said. She had laughed then. She was not laughing now. The front doors were chained, but the side alley had a service door with a broken bottom panel. Clara knelt in the mud, pushed the suitcase through first, then crawled inside with Noah held tight to her chest. The air inside was colder than the rain. It smelled like dust, mold, and old wood. Clara waited for her eyes to adjust. Rows of seats stretched into darkness. The ceiling was high above her, hidden in shadow. Somewhere, water dripped into a metal bucket with a slow, steady ping. She found the ticket booth near the lobby and laid Noah on a folded coat behind the counter. His eyes opened just a little. "I know," she whispered. "I know, baby, just one night." She searched the suitcase for a dry blanket, but most of the clothes were wet. Her fingers touched the torn pieces of Daniel's letter. She pulled them out and tried to fit them together under the weak light from the alley door. "Clara, if anything happens to me, don't trust—" The rest was gone. Another piece read, "The Grand Theater. Ask why the lights—" A loud click cut through the dark. Clara froze. Somewhere deep inside the theater, a machine groaned. Then one stage light turned on. A white beam dropped from the ceiling and struck the red curtain. Noah started to cry. Clara stood slowly. Another light clicked on. Then another. The curtain glowed like blood in the dust, and on the stage, sitting on a music stand as if someone had left it there for her, was an old yellow program. Clara walked toward it with her heart beating in her throat. Across the top, in faded black ink, it said, "The Mercer Letters. Private showing. June 14th, 1952. And beneath that, written by hand, "For Evelyn, the girl they tried to hide." Clara stared at the program until the letters blurred. Evelyn. She knew that name. Her grandmother Rose had whispered it once when Clara was little. Not a full story, not even a real memory. Just a sentence spoken in a nursing home room while rain tapped the window. "My mother could sing so pretty the dead would sit up to listen." Clara had asked her name. Rose had looked toward the door like someone might be listening. "Evelyn," she said. "But don't say that name around Mercer's." At the time, Clara thought it was one of those strange things old people said when the past came loose in their minds. Now she stood in an abandoned theater owned by the Mercer family, holding a program with that same name written across it. A sound came from above. Not footsteps. A rattle. Clara looked up at the balcony. One of the stage lights flickered, then swung slightly on its old mount. Somewhere behind the wall, gears turned with a tired metal cough. She forced herself to breathe. "This is wiring," she whispered. "Old wiring, that's all." But old wiring did not place a program on a music stand. Noah cried from the ticket booth. Clara hurried back, picked him up, and kissed his warm forehead. "I'm here. I'm here." The lights stayed on. The stage waited. Clara carried Noah down the side aisle, past rows of seats covered in dust. Every step left a print. The place felt less empty than it should have. Not haunted exactly. Watched. At the edge of the stage, she found a narrow stairway leading up to the old projection room. The door at the top was swollen from damp, but it opened when she pushed her shoulder into it. Inside, film cans sat on shelves like stacked bones. A projector leaned under a torn cloth. On the far wall, a metal timer box ticked softly. Clara wiped dust from the glass cover. A small paper label had been taped inside. June 14, 11:40 p.m. Lights, curtain, booth. The date matched the program. She looked at the old clockwork gears. Someone had built this to turn on every year, on the same night. Maybe it had failed for decades. Maybe the storm had knocked something loose. Maybe Daniel had come here before he died and reset it. A chill moved through her. On the desk beside the timer was a theater ledger. Clara opened it with one hand while balancing Noah against her chest. Names filled the pages. Actors, musicians, ticket sellers, stagehands. On the last page, written in darker ink, were 4 words. The Mercer letters. Private. Under that, one name had been circled. Evelyn Hart. Clara nearly dropped the book. Hart was her grandmother's last name before she married. Hart was the name Clara's mother had carried like a bruise. Hart was the name Margaret Mercer had once said with a smile that was not kind. "You come from Hart women," Margaret had told Clara after the wedding. "They always know how to survive with very little." Clara had not understood the insult then. Now she did. She searched the projection room until Noah fell asleep again. In a bottom drawer, beneath old ticket stubs, she found a black and white photograph. A young woman stood on the grand theater stage in a white dress. Her hair was pinned back. Her smile was nervous, almost shy. Next to her stood a man in a dark suit with Mercer eyes. On the back, someone had written, "Evelyn and Thomas, before they made him choose." Thomas Mercer, Daniel's grandfather. Clara sat down hard in the old chair. "No," she whispered, but the room kept giving answers. Behind the photograph was a small brass key tied to a blue ribbon. Not new, not Daniel's. Older. Carefully saved. Clara remembered the strange key Daniel had kept on his ring, the one that opened nothing in their house, the one he told her never to throw away. She pulled his keys from the pocket of the suitcase. There it was. Same shape, same cut. Only then did she notice the mirror in the corner of the room. It was not hanging flat. One side stuck out just enough to show a dark line behind it. Clara set Noah down on her coat, took the brass key, and pulled at the mirror frame. It groaned open like a small door. Behind it sat a metal box. Her hands shook as she brought it to the desk. The lock was rusted, but Daniel's key slid in cleanly. Click. Inside were letters tied with string, a folded deed, a bank receipt, and a birth certificate so old the paper felt soft as cloth. The first letter began, "My dearest Evelyn, if my family forces you out, the theater is yours, not theirs, yours, and so is the land behind it." Clara covered her mouth. This was not a ghost story. It was worse. It was proof. If a story like this makes you wonder what old houses in your own town are still hiding, stay with us, because the first letter was only the door. What Clara found next was the reason Daniel died afraid. At the bottom of the box was a second note, folded small. "The deed is not enough. They made the county clerk lie. Find the red seat." Clara read the note 3 times. Find the red seat. She looked through the projection room window at the theater below. Hundreds of seats sat in rows under the pale stage light. They all looked dark now, almost black under layers of dust. Noah moved in his sleep. Clara wanted to stop. She wanted to lock the box, take her son, and run to some town where the Mercer name meant nothing. But Daniel's torn letter was still in her coat pocket. He had known. He had tried to tell her.
And someone had made sure he never finished.
She carried Noah down to the main floor and laid him in the ticket booth again, wrapped in the driest blanket she had. Then she stepped into the aisle and began to search. Row by row, seat by seat. Most were torn, some had no cushions left. A few had been eaten by mice. She wiped the dust with her sleeve, looking for red fabric beneath the dirt. Nothing. The theater groaned around her. Rain tapped the roof. A loose sign swung somewhere in the lobby. Then, in the 5th row from the stage, she saw it. One seat did not match the others. It had been covered in black paint long ago, but the edge was chipped. Under the paint, the cloth was deep red. Clara knelt. Her fingers found a hard shape beneath the cushion. She pulled at the old fabric, but it would not tear. She searched the floor and found a broken piece of metal from a seat hinge. It was sharp enough. She cut along the seam. Inside was a flat envelope wrapped in a 1952 theater poster. The ink had faded, but she could still read the title. The Mercer Letters, Private Showing, One Night Only. Inside the envelope was another letter. This one was not from Thomas. It was from Evelyn. June 15, 1952. If anyone finds this, my name is Evelyn Hart Mercer. I was married to Thomas Mercer in Ashe County on March 3, 1951. We had a daughter. Her name is Rose. Thomas wanted the truth recorded, but his mother said a Mercer man could not marry a theater girl with no father and no money. After Thomas died, they came for the papers. They paid Mr. Crowley at the county office to change the record. They told everyone Rose was not his child. They told me to leave town before sunrise. Clara stopped reading. Her grandmother's name sat on the page like it had been waiting 70 years to breathe. Rose. Not a rumor, not a shame. A daughter. A Mercer daughter. Clara folded the letter against her chest. For the first time that night, she did not feel only fear. She felt anger. Cold, clean anger. By morning, she was at the Ashe County Records office, with Noah sleeping in a sling against her. The clerk at the front desk was a small woman with round glasses and a tight mouth. "I need a birth record," Clara said. "Rose Hart, born 1952. Mother, Evelyn Hart." The woman typed, paused, then looked up. "That file is sealed." "Sealed by who?" "I can't say." Clara leaned closer. "Is there a record for Rose Mercer?" The clerk's face changed. Only for a second, but Clara saw that too. "I told you, the file is sealed." Behind the clerk, on the wall, hung old photos of past county clerks. Clara's eyes moved across them until they stopped on a man with slick hair and a wide smile. Arthur Crowley, county clerk, 1949 to 1963. He stood in the photo beside another man, Margaret Mercer's father. The truth was not buried in one box. It was built into the town. When Clara walked back outside, Warren Mercer was waiting by her car. He wore a dark coat and a soft smile, the kind people used when they wanted witnesses to think they were kind. "You're making a mistake," he said. Clara kept one hand on Noah's back. "I don't know what you mean." "Yes, you do." Warren stepped closer. "My mother wants any old papers you found in the theater." Clara's heart kicked. So they knew. "What papers?" Warren's smile disappeared. "Don't play dumb with me. That building is dangerous. The roof could fall, wires could burn. Bad things happen in places like that." "Is that a warning?" "It's advice." He looked at Noah. "You have a baby. Think about what happens to people who hold on to things that don't belong to them." Clara did not answer. She walked past him, got into her old car, and locked the doors with shaking hands. That night, when she returned to the theater, the side door was open. The metal box was gone. So were the letters from the projection room. Clara stood in the dark, sick with panic.
Then Noah began to fuss in her arms, and as she turned to calm him, she saw something in the dust near the stage. A footprint. Small. Too small for Warren. It led behind the curtain, then stopped at a square outline in the floorboards. A trap door. Clara knelt and brushed away the dust. Under the handle, someone had carved 2 letters, E-H. The trapdoor handle was cold enough to sting Clara's fingers. For a second she did not pull it. The theater was silent around her. Too silent. No rain now, no wind. Just Noah's soft breathing against her shoulder and the slow drip of water somewhere under the stage. Then she thought of Warren waiting by her car. Think about what happens to people who hold on to things that don't belong to them. Clara gripped the handle and pulled. The wood resisted at first. Then it lifted with a low, dry crack, and a smell rose from below. Damp paper, rotting cloth, and old dust. A narrow ladder went down into blackness. Clara almost laughed. Because of course the truth was under the stage. Of course the Mercer family had hidden it below the place where people once clapped and cried and believed the show above them. She set Noah in his sling, tied him tight against her chest, and climbed down 1 step at a time. Under the stage the world changed. The ceiling was low. Wooden beams crossed overhead. Old ropes hung like dead vines. Broken scenery leaned against the walls. Painted trees, fake windows, half of a moon, a cardboard church steeple. Everything down there looked like part of a life someone had packed away in a hurry. At the far end sat a cedar trunk. On the lid, burned into the wood, were 3 letters. E-H-M. Evelyn Hart Mercer. Clara knelt in front of it. The lock was not broken,
It was open. Someone had been here before her. Her stomach turned. She lifted the lid. Inside were stacks of envelopes wrapped in oilcloth, a white dress yellowed with age, a baby bonnet, a silver hair comb,
and beneath all of it, a flat leather folder tied with blue ribbon. Clara opened it on the floor. The first document was a marriage certificate. Thomas Alton Mercer and Evelyn Grace Hart, March 3rd, 1951, Ashe County, Kentucky. The second was a deed. Mercer Grand Theater and adjoining parcel, transferred to Evelyn Grace Hart Mercer. The third was a bank receipt. $10,000 paid from Thomas Mercer's personal account to clear the theater debt. The fourth made Clara stop breathing. A birth certificate. Rose Evelyn Mercer, born February 9, 1952. Father, Thomas Alton Mercer. Mother, Evelyn Grace Hart Mercer. Clara touched the name with 2 fingers. Her grandmother had not been fatherless. She had not been a secret. She had been stolen. At the bottom of the folder was a photograph. Evelyn stood on the stage, holding a baby wrapped in white. Thomas stood beside her, one arm around her waist, smiling like he had finally stopped being afraid. On the back, in his handwriting, "Our daughter Rose. No one will erase her." Clara pressed the photo to her chest and closed her eyes. That was when she heard a floorboard creak above her. She froze. Someone was in the theater. "Noah," she whispered, barely making sound. "Stay quiet, baby." Heavy steps crossed the stage. Then Warren's voice came down through the boards. "Clara." She did not answer. "I know you're here." A flashlight beam cut through a crack above her hand. Clara shoved the folder under her coat and crawled behind a painted wall from an old set. Her knees slid in dust. Noah stirred, but did not cry. Another voice spoke. Margaret. "Find her, and find that trunk." Clara's blood went cold. The trap door opened wider. Light spilled down the ladder. Warren climbed first. Clara backed into the shadows, one hand covering Noah's hand. Margaret stayed above. "I told Daniel to leave this alone," she said. "But he had his father's weakness. He thought truth was some holy thing." Warren's shoes hit the floor below. "He was going to Bell," Margaret continued. "He said Clara deserved to know before the sale." Can you imagine? Throwing away millions for some dead theater girl. Clara's body went still. Before the sale. Daniel had been going to the lawyer, and then his truck went off Miller Bridge on a dry road. Warren moved closer to the trunk. "It's open," he called. "Then she has it," Margaret snapped. Clara waited until Warren bent over the trunk. Then she reached for a loose sandbag tied to an old stage rope. She pulled hard. Above them, something cracked. A flat painted wall dropped from the rigging and slammed between Clara and Warren with a thunderous crash. Warren shouted, Noah screamed, Clara ran. She did not climb back through the trapdoor. She pushed through a low crawl space, following a line of cold air until her shoulder hit a rusted service grate. She kicked it once, twice. On the third kick, it broke loose. She crawled into the alley behind the theater, covered in dust, holding her baby and the folder that could break the Mercer family. By sunrise, Clara was standing at the office of Henry Bell, the oldest lawyer in Briar Falls. He opened the door in a robe, took one look at her face, and said, "Daniel found it, didn't he?"
Clara held out the folder. Mr. Bell's hands shook as he untied the ribbon. Then he reached into his desk and pulled out a sealed envelope. "Daniel left this for you," he said. "He came here 6 days before the accident." On the front, in Daniel's handwriting, was one line. "Clara, I am sorry I waited until I was scared." Clara opened Daniel's letter with both hands. The paper shook so badly that Mr. Bell had to steady the corner. "Clara, if you are reading this, I failed to say the truth while I was alive. My mother knows about Evelyn. Warren knows too. They found out when my father died and left behind part of the old theater file. They thought it was gone. It wasn't. The Grand Theater belongs to Evelyn's bloodline."
That means it belongs to Rose, then to your mother, then to you, and after you, to our son. I should have told you the day I found out. I didn't because I was afraid of what my family would do. They're selling the theater on Friday. Do not let them bury her twice. Clara folded the letter slowly. "What day is it?" she asked. Mr. Bell looked at her with tired eyes. "Friday." By 10 that morning, the Mercer Grand Theater was full for the first time in decades. Not for a show, for an auction. Folding chairs had been placed in the lobby. Men in clean coats stood near the stage with clipboards. A real estate banner covered the old ticket window. Margaret Mercer stood beneath it, dressed in black, calm as stone. Warren saw Clara enter first. His face lost color. She came through the front doors with Noah in her arms, Mr. Bell at her side, and Sheriff Dale Price behind them. People turned in their seats. Whispers moved fast. Margaret smiled, but her eyes were sharp. "Clara," she said, "this is a private sale." "No," Clara said. "It's stolen property." The room went quiet. One of the investors gave a small laugh, like he wanted someone to tell him this was a mistake. Mr. Bell stepped forward and placed the leather folder on a table. "I have filed an emergency notice with the county court," he said. "This sale cannot continue." Margaret's smile cracked. "Henry, don't embarrass yourself." "I'm not the one in danger of doing that." He opened the folder. First came the marriage certificate. Thomas Alton Mercer and Evelyn Grace Hart. Then the deed. Then the bank record. Then Rose's birth certificate. The sheriff looked over each page and placed them flat for the room to see. Margaret's voice turned cold. "Old paper proves nothing. Anyone can make old paper." A voice came from the back. "That paper is real?" Everyone turned. An old woman stood near the doors, bent over a cane, with a purple scarf tied around her white hair. Miss Lottie Bell, Henry Bell's older sister. She had sold candy at the theater in 1952. "I saw Evelyn on that stage," Miss Lottie said. "I saw Thomas kiss that baby's head. And I saw Mercer men come here after midnight and carry boxes out the side door." Margaret stared at her. "You were a child." "I was 12, Miss Lottie said. "Old enough to remember when a family steals from a mother." Warren moved toward the table, but Sheriff Price put a hand on his chest. "Don't." Clara stepped onto the stage. For a second she could barely breathe. This was where Evelyn had stood. This was where Rose had been held. This was where the Mercers had tried to turn a life into a rumor. Clara reached into the folder and pulled out the last letter, Evelyn's letter. Her voice shook at first. "My name is Evelyn Hart Mercer. If my daughter ever returns to this place, tell her I did not leave because I was ashamed.
I left because they had money and I had a baby. Tell her the theater was bought with love, not pride. Tell her the stage lights were left for her. One day someone will walk in after everyone says she has no home, and this place will know her."
Clara stopped. Noah made a soft sound against her shoulder. Then somewhere above the old stage lights clicked on, one by one. White beams fell across Clara, the folder, the baby, and Margaret Mercer's frozen face. No one spoke. The investor closed his clipboard. "We're out," he said. Another man nodded. "Same." Margaret turned on Warren.
"Fix this."
But Warren was already stepping back. He did not look at his mother. He did not look at Clara. He walked down the aisle and out through the front doors. The sheriff took the folder and looked at Margaret. "We'll need to talk at the station." Margaret laughed once, small and bitter.
"You think this makes you a Mercer?" she said to Clara.
Clara held Noah tighter.
"No," she said. "It proves I never needed to be."
6 months later, the old theater smelled of paint, clean wood, and coffee. The roof no longer leaked.
The broken seats were being repaired, one row at a time. In the lobby, where the real estate banner had hung, there was now a brass plaque, "The Evelyn Hart Mercer Stage." Clara stood beneath while Noah held the edge of a theater seat and took 3 small steps. Then he fell on his diaper and laughed. Clara laughed too, and for the first time in a long time, the sound did not hurt. That evening she locked the front doors with Daniel's key. Before leaving, she looked back at the stage. The curtain was closed. The lights were off. But the place did not feel empty anymore. Old houses remember. Old letters prove what families try to bury. And sometimes, when the world throws a mother into the rain, the past opens one locked door and says, "Come in. This was yours all along." If this story stayed with you, subscribe to the channel. There are more old letters waiting to be opened.